Thanks everybody for joining me. My name is Ben Johnson, and we love talking to forward-thinking CEOs and technology leaders about how they leverage technology to accelerate business growth and value. So welcome, Garrett, to the Particle Accelerator.
Hey, Ben, thanks for having me.
Yeah, man. Could you just, for our audience, introduce yourself a little bit? Tell us what you do and what you're all about.
Hey, everybody, my name is Garrett Mintz. I'm the founder of Ambition in Motion. At Ambition in Motion, our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work. When they are there, their expectations meet reality, and when they come home, they feel fulfilled. And we believe that starts with leaders because leaders create the experiences employees have while at work. And so we create technologies and communities to empower leaders to be their best selves for their teams.
Well, that lines up with how I've experienced you, Garrett. I've always experienced you as somebody who cares a lot about the people that you come into contact with, and so I'm super excited to just talk to you about these, kind of the particle accelerators kind of format here. To kick it off, what technology innovations are you betting on to drive your business growth?
Yeah, so what's interesting is one thing that we've created is this program called Name Insights, which Ben, your team has been a part of it before. And what it does is it helps leaders get a pulse as to how their direct reports are feeling at work and rectify the perception gaps between leaders and their direct reports. And so we do that via like surveys and gathering those surveys on a monthly format. But the other component to it is the coaching that goes with it. Like I think technology and the use of technology. So we've got like an AI integration when it comes to goal setting and setting objectives and key results. And we recently have launched this cascading goals program, which your team helped inspire for us to create. And I guess long story short is we leverage technology to help advance leaders and their teams' performance, but we do believe that at the end of the day, there's a human element to all of it. Like even if I recognize through the data and through the technology, okay, I believe my direct reports are performing like right here. They're really struggling, let's say, as the manager, I think they're really struggling. And maybe I, as the leader, or rather, they individually think they're doing fantastic. If there's a perception gap there, how we go about rectifying that perception gap and getting on the same page is really critical. And that's where I feel like coaching and guidance to a leader is so critical. So with the technology, having really experienced, strong, talented coaches to help guide leaders through those conversations helps those conversations stick and be impactful for teams because there's a variety of ways you can go about handling a perception gap issue. You could just straight up say, hey, we're putting you on a performance improvement plan without asking any clarifying questions or without being curious whatsoever. Or we could ask questions. We could practice curiosity. We could say, hey, I would love to learn what aspects of your work could use greater clarity for myself or other team members, or what are some ways that I might be able to better set expectations with you because maybe I'm missing some things that you're working on that I didn't fully understand that you were doing. There are so many ways that we can apply technologies to better understand our insights and then actually drive our team's performance. But I think a human element in assisting the technology is really critical. I guess that's a long way of saying is I think humans with technologies can make technologies really, really powerful.
Yeah, no, I totally agree. And my experience of your service, that goal setting, just getting my whole team aligned with goal setting and thinking about goals over tasks. We talk a lot about goals over tasks, and really because of the inspiration coming from the software we used. But yeah, working with Hannah and some of your other coaches was great to make sure that people understood why goals were so important. And as they were running into interpersonal challenges, attacking the interpersonal challenges is leadership. The tools and the Slack messages and the emails aren't leadership. How we actually work with people is the leadership. So totally on point, and I couldn't agree more that it's not just about the mechanism; it's about the intention. And the only way we communicate our intention is personally, right?
So true. Well, and not only that, but also from like a CEO standpoint, like from your perspective, with having multiple layers of leadership throughout your organization, like you may have an initiative you want to drive forth throughout the entire organization, and your VP next level below you might be like, cool, I get it. Ben wants to do this. I'm kind of on board, but like I understand. But then the next layer below that, that's maybe a middle manager, they're like, it's now the next layer of communication. That's where sometimes there's a communication gap. And so by having a coach to come in there and say like, hey, here's why we're doing this. This is how this all plays together, and allowing the coach to really fully like explain the full vision of everything to help guide that can be really helpful because sometimes when we have layers of leadership, that next layer down isn't fully, not necessarily they're not on board, but they don't maybe fully understand the why and can't elaborate and explain to the next level of leadership why they're doing it. It's kind of like, hey, we're doing this thing, like we're asking you to do it, so like please go ahead and take care of it. Instead, it's like, hey, this is going to help us set better goals. This is going to help us get on the same page. It's going to help us drive our productivity and not just focus on, hey, you got task A, B, and C done, but like your tasks are working towards this greater outcome that we as a team are working towards accomplishing. And so you might have put a puzzle piece into the giant jigsaw puzzle, but I want to let you know there is a giant jigsaw puzzle that we're working towards, and there's a giant vision that we're painting a picture of, and your piece plays a big part in that, not just my piece is in and I don't really know where it goes in this whole grand scheme of things.
Yeah, yeah. If you don't mind a quick aside, um, I'm finding as a CEO, as a business leader, and as a father of two college student or a senior in high school and college student, a realization just hit me that um, our collective knowledge is advancing on information. Information's becoming far more accessible, but like the teaching around mindsets and even like how to balance a checkbook and some of the like practical life advice or framing is severely lacking. We kind of repeat these same 12 years of curriculum over and over again. And so it's services like yours that give me hope that we're also addressing some of the soft skills around professionalism that are just completely not going to get picked up in formal training or education.
Yeah, well, I mean, I think education is starting to work its way towards that, but at the end of the day, humans are not automatons. We are not robots. This is like humans are not like AI is great from I think a suggestion and knowledge base and being able to accumulate a bunch of information and be able to give us something really quickly that we can digest. But it is the human that acts on said information that does whatever outcome is they're working towards achieving, whether it be goal setting, whether it be setting OKRs, whether it be writing a paper, whether it be submitting a bunch of cover letters customized to a job posting, whatever it may be that you're using an AI system for, or any technology for that matter, it's still the human that needs to apply it that ultimately is going to determine the success or failure of that outcome.
Well said, brother. Well said. All right, moving on here. Where are the most significant gaps between your digital ambitions and realities today?
Yeah, I mean, shoot, we're always, one way I listened to a podcast. It's the podcast with Reid Hoffman. It's the Blitzscaling podcast, and he was interviewing the guy who founded Airbnb. And one of the things the guy from Airbnb was saying was, okay, if we could give our customers a 5-star experience, what would that look like? What, a 6-star, a 7-star, an 8-star, 9-star, 10-star, 11-star, like keep adding stars, even if it's not scalable, even if it's not the most sexy solution in the world, even if it's not even feasible. You can't even do it. Like you're just magic wanding it. Like if I had a magic wand and could do this for my customer, I would do that. That's my approach to a lot of the innovations. And so, the gap between digital and like where we are and from a reality perspective is just constantly looking at like if I could wave a magic wand and create an additional benefit for my clients and customers, what would I do? And yeah, I mean, we're always driving new innovations. So one new innovation that like your team helped inspire was this cascading goals, but like an add-on from that was being able to dynamically look at what kind of industry is that person's company in? What is their title? What is their role within the organization? And then from there, can we come up with some suggested objectives and key results that based on what they do, who they are, and where they're at, and all the other information on the internet, might be some 5 core things they might be working towards from an objective and key result, allowing them to choose which one they want to focus on. And they don't have to choose any of them, but the idea is that we know a lot of leaders struggle with setting OKRs, and having some guidance as to what they might want to set their goals at based on what other leaders of similar teams and similar industries are doing, we found to be really helpful. But I mean, shoot, if we could have a magic chip that we could implant into people's brains like Elon Musk's Neuralink thing, where I could know what are some of your goals and then being able to disseminate that through technology and then be able to help teach like, vocal intonation, body language, common great human communication questions that allow you to be mentors and leaders to other people. Like that would be amazing. And that I guess would be the, end, that would be like the next level where we're not there yet, but we're working on helping augment that communication between leaders and their teams.
That's really cool. How do you align your technology roadmap to your overall business strategy?
Yeah, so we follow. Our team, we read The Infinite Game together by Simon Sinek, and in The Infinite Game, Simon talks about we have this just cause that we're working towards, and there are a variety of factors that help us determine, hey, do we pursue this or do we not pursue this? And so when I said our vision is a world where the vast majority of people are excited to go to work, when they're there, their expectations meet reality, and when they come home, they feel fulfilled. Every innovation we make, if it does not align with that, we don't make it. And if it does align with that, we do. And we give it a try. Like when we first got started, we were just in higher ed creating mentor programs. And what we learned was that this traditional model of mentoring wasn't working. So this idea of saying, hey, you're a senior person, you're a junior person, you're both in the same field, connect them. Only 18% of those relationships lasted for 6 months and were considered productive and quality. And so as we partnered with industrial organizational psychologists and studied what would work and what wouldn't work, that helped us expand into executive mastermind groups. Because what we realized was, okay, well, we're helping students figure out their career paths and um, where their expectations can meet reality for the work and help them become better. But executives also need this guidance too. So we decided we would create executive mastermind groups. And then when a lot of those executive leaders were leading remote teams or were promoting individual contributors to managers, and they said, man, I wish I could get some guidance to help my teammates out. We were like, does this align with our core values? It does. And so we created AIM Insights. And then when our leader said, hey, this pandemic is starting to subside, can we get together in person? We started building executive symposiums. And so our innovation process is always predicated based on that vision of, does this help? Yeah, does this help align with our vision and where we're trying to go, or just cause, so you will?
Yeah, I've had a really good time being part of your executive symposium process over 2023. It was super great. For FaceTime. It was a solid networking event. You put on just a great, enjoyable event. You always treat your guests really well. And then, the content has just gotten better and better and better every single time. And so, yeah, it's been really awesome to be part of those events. So yeah, I mean, it sounds like, your main thing is just to stay mission aligned and make sure everything that you put your time into. Has there ever been a time where you have, like what I find people struggle with is the big rocks, right? The larger things that are maybe tech team says they're higher level of effort. So how do you kind of defer your big rocks? I always talk about big rocks, small rocks, and sand. Sand is kind of the low hanging fruit or the things we can tick and tie and tweak that users suggest. The medium size, but these big boulders, they're the ones that usually take like a quarter's worth of effort. What's your thought process on those, just on the tech side?
Yeah, I like to oscillate. Now, I'm a non-technical founder, so I come from almost always the user experience side. I'm always come from like, hey, I want to know how is this going to impact our customer? How is this going to, make our customers' experiences even better? Which naturally, or maybe unnaturally, I don't know, causes me to be less inclined to be like, oh, let's upgrade our backend system to this new version, which might make our system run a little bit faster, or like make our data lake, a little bit more efficient or whatever. And I'm like, cool, great, but does this make it better for our customers? But what I've learned over time is that I need to oscillate. I need to, for every new customer initiative that makes our customer experience better, from like an end all user experience perspective, I have to balance that with like an upgrade from a backend system. Because ultimately, if we've got all these features and cool opportunities, but our website's not running as fast as we need it to, or our customers are not able to fully use it or operationalize it because the data is not pulling down quickly enough, that ultimately impacts the user experience. And so for me, it's always about the user. It's always about how do we make it better. And balancing the things that you do see with the things that you don't see, but you feel. If
Yeah,
that
that
makes
totally
any
makes
sense.
sense. We have this in some of our consulting where that we talk about high value versus high need. And you sound like usually the user experience is in that high value category
Yeah.
where it's something that's going to make you different, something that's going to make you stand out in the marketplace. And it sounds like you love to spend your time and your resources in that. But there are these high need things that are like, oh man, we have to have stable hosting, right? We
Yeah.
have to have high performant data systems, right? And so typically of course, you're going to partner in those areas, but you have to partner well and really choose and integrate with the best of breed providers. And so, yeah, I like that idea of oscillating. But I think you're in good company if the majority of your budget is spent in the high tier, the high value, directly impacting user areas. Yeah, that sounds
Yeah.
awesome.
Well, I also like just a note on that. I think the big thing for me is always focusing on what is the problem, not necessarily what is like the thing that's being asked of us. Because I
Hmm.
recognize like there's only so much that our customers can fathom in terms of what they think the solution is. But if I can obsess about what the problem is, like what is the problem that they're having, I'm much more likely to create a really cool solution because I understand what's technologically feasible and possible better than what our client can. And if I can obsess what is the problem, I can then work on a solution that might not even be what they even thought of.
Yeah, and it can also be more surgical in terms of time and effort. Yeah, and
Totally. And when
uh,
I say I mean we, my team. Like,
yeah, but
from
yeah,
as a
you're
non-technical leader, like I'm not the one who's going into the, back end and coding all this. I've got teammates that are really doing the brunt of this work, and yeah, I'm really lucky to have them.
Yeah, that's great. Yeah, but the solution needs to be elegant, but specifically solve the need, and then write that balance. That's great. Do you have any lessons learned that you'd be willing to share? Just something that went a certain way, didn't deliver the expected value, and what you learned from that situation.
Yeah, I mean, tons. I mean, are we talking about just today alone, or are we talking
Right, right.
about, yeah, I mean, there's a variety of things. So one thing that we started doing, so when we were in higher ed, we knew we needed to eventually pivot into corporate. We didn't necessarily know how. And one thing we ended up doing was thinking like, oh, well, we've got this huge database of students. I mean, we're working at over 300 campuses, thousands of students, and mentors. And we thought, what if we could create a really cool recruitment platform for all these students where we could help place them in internships and jobs? And we started doing that. But the amount of effort it took to bring on new businesses to hire out of our system was incredibly high. And so we ended up not pursuing that much further. I mean, we had a couple of deals and they were fine, but what we ended up realizing was, shoot, keep it simple. You've got a great mentor program, run mentor programs for companies. That's what we did. And so we started running mentor programs for companies, and that started going really well as a way of just breaking down communication barriers across departments and teams. And then same thing with the executive mastermind group. Essentially, it's a mentor program, but for executives and helping them learn from each other and grow. AIM Insights was probably the biggest deviation we've ever made, but it still follows a lot of the core tenets of mentorship of like, hey, great leaders are great mentors. And so we can apply all of these core tenets that we've learned from being a great mentor to leaders using AIM Insights that can help them become the best leaders they can be to their teams and people.
Yeah, that's really cool. Um, awesome. If you had to sum up the core lesson there, how would you sum that up?
Yeah, the core lesson within that is just because you're pursuing an area that you think might be opportunistic, have the self-awareness and the humility to recognize that, you know what, hey, that may not have been the right fit. I also think that goes for hiring too. Like, I think oftentimes we're not necessarily the best judge of maybe not actually character, but like people in an interview process. Like, no matter how many interviews we do or how many, pre-tests or screens we run, it's easy for us to make not necessarily the best hiring decisions sometimes. And sometimes there are diamonds in the rough that you like never thought would be a great hire, and then they end up being an amazing hire. And so I guess where I'm going within all of this is that when you recognize something is not working in the right decision, be objective enough to recognize, yes, I know it was my call to make go in this direction, but give your team the upfront just like hey like overview that there's a chance I need to backtrack this. Like there's a chance that this pivot we're making may not end up working and may not work the way we want it to. And yeah, we might have to backtrack it. Like I'll give one example, another example that comes to mind. We created a program called AIM Goals, which allows people to set goals and use our AI integration for free to just set goals and track them. And we just thought, oh, like let's just make it available and anyone could sign up. And what we realized was that the marketing efforts to put ourselves out there to allow people to use it for free was not commensurate with the amount of traction we were gaining in the market. And so we said, hey, all right, it's still available for people if they want to use aim goals, but it's not going to be our, it's not going to be our biggest lead funnel.
Yeah. I think the word pivot is a great word. Like um, I recently learned this concept of intention plus mechanism equals results. And the question is how much intention to what portion of mechanism do you need to equal the results? And most people will say, some people will say, oh, you need 90% attention and 10% mechanism, or you need 100% attention and 100% mechanism. But when we ask ourselves, like, really what we need is 100% intention. Like, our intention, our setting of the goal, of the desired outcome is really all we need. If we consider the mechanism even a little bit, we will convince ourselves that it's not a good idea, that it's not the correct intention.
What do you mean by the mech? Yeah, I've not heard this before. This is interesting. What do you mean by the mechanism?
So, mechanism would be like a how am I going to do this? The means to do it.
Yeah.
And so if we say the intention plus the means equals result, then we'll never get the result because we'll always be worried about having all the exact mechanism. It's kind of like, oh, I want to see all the steps in front of me. The same thing probably doesn't work really good when you're building something with your hands. You want to have the intention plus the tools to equal the result. But when it comes to business, it's really just all about the intention. I'm sure when you started your symposiums, you said, I'm going to have a symposium, I'm going to schedule it for this date. And once you had that clear intention, everything started coming together. You didn't worry
Yeah.
about if you would have the venue, if you would have the catering, and not all of that had to come in place in order for you to get the result. The intention is the most important part. 100% intention will almost guarantee the results. The other kind of phrase that goes along with this is a man with a vision will not be deterred by circumstance.
Yeah. Well, I mean, yeah, no, that's interesting. This makes me think of like Uber in the early days of Uber when people were like, "Oh, I wouldn't get in any vehicle that's not a taxi for transporting me around. Like, what if the person who's a driver is like a rapist or a crazy person? Like you have no idea whose car you're getting into." And it's like they're like, "Okay, well, we'll test this theory and see if it works." And, for the most part, everybody uses Uber and there's 99% chance that you're not gonna be assaulted while getting an Uber ride from your Uber driver. But yeah, it was
Yeah, if we worry about even the worst that could happen, we'll never be able to accomplish the best that could happen.
exactly. And I don't know, when I think about the how and that mechanism, that's what I'm thinking about is like, oh, what are all the things that could go wrong in the how versus just like, hey, we're gonna run this thing, we're gonna give it a try, we're gonna learn from it, and we're gonna make it better over time and carve it.
Sure, for sure. Yeah, I think if your aim is survival, you'll never do anything, right? Because you just want to survive. But if your aim is to do something amazing, then you'll set an intention to do something amazing. Awesome. So how do you cultivate a culture of innovation and digital fluency in your organization?
Yeah, I mean, great question. I think it's an ever evolving process. I like to say one thing I recognize is that objectivity diminishes the higher anyone goes in any organizational hierarchy. As a CEO, I recognize that not everybody is going to call me out on whatever thing that I say or whatever idea I come up with. Why? Because I'm the CEO. Like, it's just natural for us to respect those that are in authority because we want to preserve our jobs. We don't want to get fired, whatever that may be. But I really try my best to cultivate an environment where people can be curious, where people can ask questions, where people can fall on their face, learn from those lessons. I mean, shoot, I personally learned best from falling on my face. And there are things that I know that I'm going to fall on my face on and it's not going to work out. But it's like I need to experience the face plant to actually go through it. And I recognize other people are like that too. And so giving people on my team the grace to face plant and to be able to try new things and to experiment and to come to me, propose ideas. Um, and that I have the resources financially to support the face plant and the learning and the growth of all that is the environment I try to facilitate here because I recognize that if I'm living at the razor's edge where we can't afford any mistakes, no innovation is going to ever happen. And so we got to have the buffer to allow us to try new things, have an experimental approach about it, saying like, hey, this is our hypothesis. Here are the constant variables. Here are the variable variables, and this is what we think is going to happen if we do this thing. And after doing it, we realign and reassess. Did it work? Did it not work? Why did it work? Why did it not work? And we go from there.
Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, setting that intention for your team and then giving them the room to move the variables around is really awesome. Sometimes we'll see that having an intention to do something by a certain date is great. You cut a little scope, you thin out the experiment, you hit the date. Having controlling both sides of the equation, the scope and the time is overbearing and it doesn't lead to success. So we find that if we exchange control of one of those two things, like either we can accomplish a certain objective by a date, or we let the date be a little looser and we flex the scope. And as long as we in the exchange keep one of those two things on one side, then we can pretty much ensure success and general satisfaction from both sides of the team. Um, so that's great. That sounds super familiar. Anything else you want to say about culture? Because you
Yeah,
are
I
you
mean,
are a hardcore culture guy. I've learned a lot from you in that regard.
thanks. I think I think the best cultures come about when there are leaders that have the self-awareness to recognize that there are issues in cultures. You know what I mean? Like I think if you're like pounding your chest saying we've got the best culture in the world, like through osmosis everybody learns from me and I've read all these leadership books and because of that it just comes out of my pores like as if I just ate garlic and I'm a vampire and it's just coming out of me. But in reality, that's not how leadership works. That's not how culture works. If we're trying to build the best culture we possibly can, we have to have the humility and self-awareness to recognize that there's a chance we are the emperor with no clothes. There's a chance that we've got spinach in our teeth, metaphorically. And if that's the case, we want to have team members that are willing to tell us, hey, you got some spinach in your teeth. Like, hey, there are some things that we're making a mistake on that we would like to rectify and improve. Obviously, having an appropriate cadence for how to go about having those conversations is critical. But at the end of the day, if we don't have the self-awareness to recognize that we are flawed and can make mistakes, it's going to be really hard for our team members to also point out said mistakes within our team.
Yeah, I remember early in my career, I was kind of an early team leader. It was kind of my first role as a team leader, and I had a great mentor. And he did something that would probably be frowned upon in today's working culture. He took my keyboard and mouse away, and because he recognized that I was trying to get everyone on my team to make me successful. I was trying to get everyone on my team to make me productive, which was just a pathway to overloading myself. And when he did that, he did it for a week. And his criteria to get my keyboard and mouse back is like when everybody on your team knows what they're supposed to do, has a full workload, you've organized the work with them and you've worked with them instead of um, you worked on the project, not just in the project. He gave it back to me as one of the best lessons I ever learned. Just caring about the collective productivity of the team over my personal productivity. Um,
Man, that's a cool story. You see that all the time, though. I mean, that happens with so many like new leaders. I mean, I don't know. This is my personal soapbox around companies that become so tactically focused, they become firefighters and build a firefighter culture of like, put this fire out, put that fire out. If this customer says we don't create this new feature, they're gonna walk. Get on it, go, go, go. And if we become so obsessed with that, we will eventually build a culture where it's all micromanagement. There's no opportunities for growth. And to your point of like your manager taking away your keyboard and mouse, like you were forced to be a leader. You're like, shoot, I'm not getting any of this like software code development done. I have to empower all of these people that now report to me to get this done, which means I need to delegate, I need to trust, I need to empower, and I need to make sure that we're clear on expectations. And then ideally, you've got a team that's really powerful and can do the work. I mean, ultimately, that's what the role of the leader is. It's not to put on the hero cape and work these crazy hours and use your amount of time in the office as a badge of honor. It should be about the ability for you to empower your team to get the most work done so then you can work on the high level strategic work.
Yeah, that's so good. All right, one more question and we'll wrap it up here. What advice would you give peers or at the beginning of their career? And I'll give you two options here. You could either tell me a story because sometimes shared experience is better than advice, or if you'd like to give some advice. And we're just really trying to help the folks that might be new to digital professions or new to a digital transformation journey. So I'll leave it up to you and ask it either a shared experience or some key advice.
I think when in doubt, be curious. At the end of the day, the best mentors are the ones that ask the best questions and are taking the time to be inquisitive and curious. And I believe that also applies to leadership. I think that applies to improvement at any time. I think when we feel like we're rushed or we need to jump to some conclusion or we need to get some outcome to be achieved, that's when we lose curiosity and don't fall into that trap. Like at the end of the day, when in doubt, be curious. When
Yeah,
frustrated, when angry, when really agitated about a team member, about an outcome, about something that happened to you that you were not expecting or hoping for, be curious. Don't just jump right into, jumping off the deep end. Because if we can't be curious, we will make mistakes, we will waste time, and we will have a lot of untapped potential and energy being wasted.
yeah, that's so good. That is so good. A good some buddies of mine, they say, if you're feeling shame, you're doing it wrong. Why not get curious instead? So if you feel like you're underperforming or you don't want to ask questions why you don't know, there's this element of like shame going on if we're not don't feel like we're performing at our absolute best instead of saying, well, why am I not performing at my absolute best, or why is my team not performing? And then being curious about what those solves could be. I feel like that's a good extension of what you just said.
I
And
think on that note, I just want to add to that practice. Like if you're gonna have a hard conversation with anybody or on anything, don't wing it. Don't like practice. Be intentional. Like the best way to be curious is to come in with an intention of what's going to happen in the conversation and visualize it. Just like Michael Jordan or LeBron James or Steph Curry thinks about how the basketball is going to go in the hoop when they're counting down the final seconds of a game. Like they've run this play in their mind a million times. So when they hit it, they expect it because they've run this situation in their mind, countless times. We should be able to do that in the same way with hard conversations. And so I think if we're intentional about practicing how we think a conversation can go, in the best way and practice curiosity, we're going to lead to the best results for our teams.
yeah, I love it. Sometimes asking somebody why they responded in a certain way rather than being upset about it, like reserving that, like what you think is true. I once had a coworker that was acting kind of aggressively and got an opportunity one-on-one to just say, hey, I noticed this reaction to this particular situation. Is everything okay? And I found out I had no idea, but I found out that their wife was having some medical issues, and it turned into like a completely different conversation than what I was expecting. I expected it to turn into I'm right and you're wrong. Instead, it was, oh man, I didn't mean to react that way. I have this other thing going on, and we were able to support that teammate and kind of come around them in that in that moment in their lives. And just like you started out the pod saying that, hey, it's about human interaction. It is really about like we're not just workers doing our profession. We're human beings experiencing life, faith, family, fitness, finance, all of it, right? We're doing all of those things all at once. And so absolutely agree. Curiosity is a great, just a really good overall be curious is a great statement. So yeah, thank you for that.
I love that example. I think it still even goes back to the practice component because like you can ask why do you feel that way in a variety of ways. but the way you said it was very inquisitive. Like, hey, I noticed there's some things going on. I'd be curious, why do you feel that way? Or why did you say that thing? Like when you say it in that sort of vocal intonation, it's much more likely to breed a positive response. Whereas if you were to say, hey, why'd you do that thing? Like, what's going on? Why'd you do that? If you
Yeah,
said it like that, it becomes more accusatory and less inquisitive because there's almost like an air of assumption around why you acted that way, and it's a confirmation bias from
yeah.
that here.
What we train internally is to use the statement, I experienced you as. And so the way we approach that, or the way we practice that, is I experienced you as aggressive when that question or that situation, can you help me understand what was going on there? And and then we prepare people to be able to receive feedback in that way, right? When somebody says, "Hey, I'm experiencing you as this," that there's a set of teaching that goes along with it that says, "I might not be right. I might be seeing you because that way. I might be experiencing you that way because of who I am, not because of who you are." And so we teach that. We have some soft skill teaching that's like lets people know that sometimes the meanings that we interpret may actually become from the way we are. And those meanings don't always have to be right. So there's been times when I've said, "Hey, I'm experiencing you as critical," and my business partner is like, "Yeah, because the I'm experiencing you as sloppy." And we can then have that discussion and be like, "Okay, can you point out some examples where I was sloppy?" "Oh, you're right, man. I'll button those things up." And then my experience will probably change once I'm making the details matter. So yeah, beautiful things can happen with a little practiced, curious conflict, right? Uh,
Yeah.
that's great. That's solid. Awesome. Anything else? Maybe we should end with what's the favorite book that you've read recently? Or if you don't want to do a book plug, just what's something that you've discovered and want to give a shout out to?
Well, I mean, I don't know. There's so many books that I really enjoy. I'm currently reading Dare to Lead by Brene Brown, and just practicing vulnerability within that. I think that's a fantastic book. Um, and I like to kind of like oscillate between, you know, business books, psychology books, sales books, marketing books, team performance technology books. I like to like have a rotation. But one that I've recognized that I've brought up a couple times recently in our mastermind groups is this book called The Courage to Be Disliked. It's like this Japanese parable. It's written in narrative form, so it's really easy to consume. It's relatively short, but what it follows is a lot of like Adlerian psychology, which a core example of Adlerian psychology would just say is like people want to know why someone's doing something. So as opposed to saying somebody like, "Hey, great job on that activity," it should like Adlerian psychology would say a better way to say that is I really appreciated that you did XYZ action because it allowed me to achieve ABC outcome, and I would not have been able to achieve ABC outcome if it weren't for you doing that. Like helping people and reiterating where their puzzle piece fits into your puzzle, whether it be as a leader or a collaboratory department, or any other entity within a business. If you may assume they know why, and if you were to ask them, they might give you a reason why that might be aligned with it. But if we can repeat it and reiterate it multiple times, you are going to get continued buy-in from those people because they then fully understand why that action is important. I think we really devalue the power of repetition, especially when it comes to the why. And the courage to be disliked covers a lot of that.
Yeah, that is so powerful. Yeah, the your impact was like your effort caused this result or this outcome for me. I really genuinely appreciate that. That's so solid. The title reminds me of a lot of times in interaction, we're just not willing to take the risk to be honest and give feedback. And we don't care about the person enough to risk the relationship to give that honest feedback. And so the title hooked me immediately because I believe that there's these beautiful collisions, right? That not every in the past I've been somewhat conflict avoidant, and I realize I don't take that risk to potentially get to a better outcome for both people. And so, life is about risks. You have to interact. So that's great. I'm jotting that book down. I definitely going to check it out. Appreciate that.
Of course.
All right, man. It's been great to be here with you. How can people get a hold of you? How would you like them to reach out? How can they continue the conversation with you? And when's your next symposium?
Yeah, connect with me on LinkedIn. Our next symposium's on February 15th in Austin, Texas. The topic is how to build a culture of accountability. Would love to see you there. Our website's ambition-in-motion.com. So you can learn a little bit more about our work. But LinkedIn, I do a lot of work on LinkedIn. Connect with me. I'm pretty active there. And yeah, we'd love to continue the conversation from there. Just say you listen to this podcast.
Awesome, Garrett. Thank you. Thank you so much for being here.
Of
Appreciate you.
course.